It is the top of the hour, and we are starting with a gunman still on the loose in Texas. He is armed, he is dangerous, he is nowhere to be found, and there are no leads, in the words of the FBI, as the community mourns 5 people killed, including a 9-year-old. We are live on the ground in Texas. Plus, just breaking now, the military is tracking another mysterious balloon, this one just now leaving Hawaii's airspace. Does it pose any real threat? And the clock is ticking for Hollywood studios and writers to reach an agreement, what they're fighting for and what it means for the shows you and I watch. Plus, why the so-called godfather of AI is quitting his job at Google. He wants to warn people about the technology he helped create. And in tonight's original, how some states are trying to limit access to critical gender-affirming care, not just for trans kids, but now for trans adults as well. We'll tell you about a key ruling out of Missouri today that might slow down that push later in the show. Good day, I'm Tom Costello. I'm in for Hallie. And 3 days after a man executed 5 people, including a 9-year-old boy in a Houston suburb, police have no idea where he is. 0 leads, in the words of the FBI. Here are the aerial pictures we're getting right now of the manhunt. Police have been getting reports of a possible match to the suspect in nearby Montgomery County, Texas, where the 250 officers, from local, state, and federal agencies are involved in the dragnet. They're looking for this man, 38-year-old Francisco Oropesa. Police say he is armed, dangerous, and they're offering an $80,000 reward for him. Here's what we know about Oropesa. He is a Mexican national who has been deported 4 times already. Police believe he may have been intoxicated during the attack and may have a prior drunk driving conviction. He has a rather distinct tattoo on his left forearm, and he is suspected of killing these 5 people right here: Sonia Guzman, Diana Alvarado, Luisa Rivera, also Jose Casares, and 9-year-old Danielle Lasso. Why? Because this family asked him to stop shooting his AR-15 in the front yard because he kept their infant awake. The man you see crying right here, he lost his wife Sonia and his son Daniel in this senseless attack. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is in Cleveland, Texas. Priscilla, the big question I think we all have right now, why haven't police been able to find this guy yet?
Yeah, Tom, no leads at this point. Instead, officials are turning to signs like this one spread throughout the community to try to get tips coming in. We've seen some of that working today with those calls of reports and police going out to search areas and see if there is a reported sighting. And that is something that we have not seen in the last several days. But to your question of how we got here, hours after this crime occurred, police believed that they were closing in on the suspect. They believed that they had him in a wooded area not far from where we are now, and they were tracking him using dogs, also using officers on horseback and heat-sensing drones. But what officers ultimately found there was an abandoned cell phone and clothing that are believed to belong to the suspect in this case. And shortly after that, we know that the dogs that were tracking him lost his scent. And so that is why officials are now turning to the public, urging anyone with information to come forward. FBI agents are saying that the suspect may be reaching out to friends at this point, and they're hoping that that $80,000 reward will entice someone with information to come forward that could lead to his capture. Tom?
Priscilla, what more do we know about the victims and their stories? This is just horrific.
Yeah, Tom. Well, police have confirmed that all 5 of those victims were Honduran nationals. And I spoke with the father of the 9-year-old who was killed, the father, Wilson Garcia. He was in the home that night, and he told me that his wife was shot first and that his son Daniel ran to her. And that is when the gunman opened fire on him. But he says that his son was trying to protect his mom because that's who he was, a good kid, an active kid who just wanted to help. And we know that the 2 other women who were killed, Diana Alvarado and Julissa Rivera, covered some of the children that survived this incident. Authorities told us that the 2 women were found on top of these children. These children were covered in blood, but they were alive because of the selfless acts of those women to cover them. And as I mentioned, they are Honduran nationals. And I want to play a little bit, though, about what the sheriff had to say about immigration status, which I should point out, we don't know their immigration status, but I want to play a little bit of what the sheriff had to say about that. Take a listen.
I don't care if he was here legally. I don't care if he was here illegally. He was in my county. 5 people died in my county, and that is where my heart is.
And I asked Wilson Garcia, the father of that 9-year-old, what he would like to say to the killer who was on the loose. And he said that he wants him to turn himself in because he doesn't want another family to have to deal with the pain that he is now living through. Tom?
Yeah, just horrific. Priscilla Thompson, thank you very much. All right, now to some other breaking news we have, and an NBC News exclusive. The U.S. military is tracking another mysterious balloon that flew over American soil. 3 U.S. officials tell us the object flew across portions of Hawaii, though not over sensitive areas like military bases, and that they don't believe it poses a risk to aviation, traffic, or national security. You'll remember a Chinese spy balloon that took a trip over much of the continental U.S. was shot down back in February. NBC's Courtney Kuby broke the story. She joins me now. Courtney, what else do we know about this balloon today?
Well, we can call it a balloon, according to the officials that we're speaking to, but they don't really know where it came from or who owns it. They are saying that it does not appear to be another Chinese spy balloon like the one you referenced, Tom, but they really don't know who owns it. It flew over part of Hawaii. You mentioned that. The U.S. has been tracking it since late last week, and that's why they're confident that it didn't go over any sensitive sites. They also say, unlike the Chinese spy balloon, it's not maneuverable and it doesn't appear to have propulsion, meaning that the wind is basically just carrying it along. Even though it's flying at about 36,000 feet, the officials say it does not pose a threat to civilian aviation or to national security assets on the ground. In addition to that, one of the reasons that they say that it's not a national security threat is because it's not emitting or communicating any signals, also different than that Chinese spy balloon from several months ago. Now, we did just get a statement moments ago from a DoD spokesperson who said, taking all those factors into consideration, senior U.S. military leaders and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin decided not to take action against this balloon at this time. But they said they will continue in coordination with the FAA to monitor this balloon, even though now it's out of Hawaiian airspace and it's out of Hawaiian territorial waters. They're going to continue to watch this thing, Tom.
Courtney, you're the one who broke the story to begin with of the first spy balloon, and I think we all learned a lot during that case of how many balloons are up there. I mean, not necessarily military balloons, but, for example, university balloons, weather balloons, right?
Research balloons at all different altitudes. The one thing I will say about this one that we're now tracking, that's somewhere between Hawaii and Mexico right now, is that it's flying at a pretty high altitude. So it makes it a little bit different than some of these other weather and research balloons that we've been hearing about in the meantime. But again, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of concern that this is some sort of a surveillance asset. But I think it's significant the fact that the U.S. military has been watching it for several days and will continue to do so. And they're not ruling out the possibility that if it gets near land, they will still shoot this one down, Tom.
All right, Courtney, thank you. Courtney Kuby at the Pentagon for us. Water levels along parts of the Mississippi River are peaking today, but when they start to recede, what damage might there be? That's the big question for folks in low-lying areas as flood crests are hitting more than 21 feet. Look there, bags stacked up in Bettendorf, right outside of Davenport, Iowa. Water levels in the area among the 10 highest on record. And we're seeing more severe weather around the country, like this dust storm that caused a big pileup on I-55 in Illinois. In the last 20 minutes, police are confirming multiple people dead, more than 30 injured in a crash. And very strong tornadoes slamming Virginia Beach, destroying nearly 100 homes. Fortunately, no reports of anybody injured there. And what better way to ring in May than snow? Look here, all across Wisconsin, light flurries. We'll talk about that just a minute with Bill Cairns. But first, we're going to the ground. Jesse Kirsch in Davenport, Iowa. Jesse, we've been waiting for today all along. We've been hearing today would be the day that it started to peak. And what does it look like now?
Yeah, so, Tom, this has been really moving at a glacial pace. So what we're looking at right now should be downtown Davenport, but this is the overspilling of the Mississippi River behind us here. Even when we hit the official cresting of the Mississippi River here in Davenport, we're going to be looking at water levels not really dropping until tomorrow. And even then, we're expecting flooding to linger into next week in this community. So just gives you an idea of how much water is here. And for people who are not familiar with this area, they might look at this and be like, you know, quite shocked by this. I want to make clear, scenes like this have not really shocked many of the people we've spoken with on the ground here. Flooding is part of the way of life along the Mississippi River, they say. And so they kind of take this in stride because they enjoy being able to live along the river. And so they say that this is something they deal with so that they can have the beauty of living along this stretch. But, you know, like you can see right now, it's a mess downtown.
Yeah, it certainly looks like it. You know, in some of these towns, you know, flood walls have been around there for 50+ years, right? So do people there feel like they have the right defenses that they need for this kind of flooding?
Yeah, so there is a flood wall in a neighboring city, Dubuque, Iowa, which is north of here, and that has kept that downtown dry. Here you can see there is no official big flood wall. That we've talked to people about it, and some of the reaction we've heard from people is basically they like having the beauty of being right here downtown. They know how to deal with this, and there's a cost element of trying to build a wall like that right now. So they just would rather deal with the flooding. They set up their sandbags and other fortifications when it comes. They set up the pumps. They have the manpower out here monitoring the situation, and they'd rather deal with it that way in a community like this. That's the overarching sentiment, and that's what I heard from the mayor as well. But obviously, there are other communities that have flood walls, and they have proven to work, including in times like these, Tom.
Well, I asked you this last week, and I think you told me this is kind of a way of life there on the Mississippi, and people are used to it. It doesn't make it easier. Jesse, thank you very much. Jesse Kirsch. Let's go now to Bill Cairns, our meteorologist. He has the forecast. Bill, you know, the worst weather, it looks like it's over, but it's raining in some places, snowing in others. Listen, I'm from Denver. May snow is not unusual, but it still gives you whiplash.
Yeah. Yeah, and how about Upper Peninsula? I mean, we've already heard reports of 14 inches of snow in Ironwood. I mean, it's not just like, you know, a little bit of snow. It's a ton of snow. But let's talk about that horrific accident. And, you know, people are saying, or emailing me, calling me and saying, how's there a dust storm in Illinois? We don't have a drought. This isn't the Dust Bowl. Why was there this big problem with all the dust? And it was actually because of farming operations. It rained there a couple days ago. It just happens to be a very windy day. That the area along Interstate 55, there's cornfields and soy fields on both sides of the roads, and it just so happened that the combination has led to what we call a dust warning. They're literally telling people the visibility is so low into this horrific accident. And here's how the winds, back to the weather maps, the accident happened just outside of St. Louis to the north side going up Interstate 55. These winds have been gusting around 40 miles per hour all day long, and that was the reason. You know, the farmers go, they till the ground and the soil, the loose stuff's on top, the wind picks it up, and that's what's caused this horrific accident and has shut down Interstate 55 in both directions now for multiple hours. As far as the cold goes, it's warmed up a little bit after some morning snow in Green Bay, but after the sun sets, a lot of these rain showers will turn to snow showers once again. We still could pick up additional inches of snow in the Upper Peninsula there in northern Michigan. Just a cold, nasty rain from Indiana, Ohio, through Pennsylvania, western New York. Wind chills in some cases feeling like they're in the 30s. And this is just a slow-moving storm. We're not going to get the tornadoes from the weekend or anything like that, but this tomorrow is going to drift. We're still going to see numerous showers and snow showers. The only areas that could get additional snow would be the mountains of West Virginia, especially the higher peaks. That's where we could pick up maybe around 1 to 7 inches, just all plain old rain, especially in the afternoon, Tuesday and Wednesday in New England. So there's the snow totals, Tom. 6 to 10 inches in the mountains of West Virginia, and locally, someone has a chance for 2 feet of snow in northern Michigan. I mean, how cruel is that for the beginning of May?
That's brutal. I have a Canadian friend right across the water there, and he says, oh, we love it. It's winter all year long. Okay. Not for me. No. Bill, thank you very much. Bill Cairns. We're learning tonight that another American has been killed in Ukraine, that according to the State Department. Meanwhile, Russia has launched another wave of attacks right across Ukraine. Local government officials say at least 34 people were hurt, including 5 children. Most of the country woke up to the sound of air raid sirens, with the attacks causing huge fires in a city in the east and damaging dozens of homes. Recent strikes have hit relatively calm cities far from the front lines. This is the second wave of strikes across the country in just 3 days, as Moscow anticipates a Ukrainian counteroffensive could begin soon. NBC's Ellison Barber is in Kharkiv for us. Ellison, what more can you tell us about these latest attacks? Is this a preview of what is to come from Russia?
You know, Russia has carried out these waves of cruise missile attacks in places very far often from the front lines in the past, but we haven't seen them do this since March of this year. So they've taken a bit of a pause. They say the two massive strikes carried out in the last 3 days, that they were specifically targeting a military-related infrastructure, things that had housed reserve units or places where there were storage units of ammo, weapons, military equipment, things like that. But what we've seen is a lot of civilian bloodshed. What you're looking at right now is the aftermath of this morning's strikes in the Dnipro region. There, 34 people were injured, among them a number of children. The regional governor there says this was a residential area and a lot of homes were damaged. The UK's Ministry of Defense, they have said that Russia often operates an inefficient targeting system and that they prioritize perceived military necessity over preventing collateral damage. On Friday, one of the strikes that we saw, and we were on the ground for it in the city of Uman, it was a residential apartment building, 9 stories, that was just flattened almost. At least one side of it was completely gone when a missile hit that building. There was nothing we could see in the area to indicate that there was any sort of military activity there. Ukrainian officials have accused Russia of purposely targeting residential areas to try to scare civilians. We saw them do a lot of this over the winter when they were targeting electrical infrastructure. That, Tom, was part of a Russian military doctrine where they envisioned striking critical infrastructure, hoping to make civilians uncomfortable, frustrated, and then the leaders of those people to capitulate to their demands. Tom?
Yeah. Well, either it is deliberate or their military's inept, or both. But this weekend, families in the city of Uman said their final goodbyes to some of the youngest victims of a strike there, right? That happened on Friday, as we were talking about.
Yeah, I think the video of one of the funeral services really tells you about the grief in that community. This is one family burying 2 children, an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old. You see all of these people coming by to pay their respect. You'll soon see a little boy wearing an orange jacket crying next to the casket. Those were his 2 siblings. The father of these children told local media he was working. He came back and opened the door to check into that room to see where the children were. And the entire room, Tom, was gone.
Okay, Ellison, you have a hard job. Thank you very much. Ellison Barber on the ground in Kharkiv. On Wall Street, the markets closed pretty much flat today after the news of J.P. Morgan's takeover of troubled First Republic Bank. That's the second largest bank failure in U.S. history. Here's a look at how the boards shaped up today. The major indices moved lower by just a fraction of a percent in just the last hour. Not a big move at all, really. But J.P. Morgan Chase stock up just over 2% after it took over First Republic. It's not just Wall Street reacting here. President Biden says the FDIC and J.P. Morgan Chase's action will keep the banking system safe. Take a listen.
And so let me be very clear. While depositors are being protected, shareholders are losing their investments. And critically, taxpayers are not the ones that are on the hook.
Well, the fall of First Republic is the largest lender collapse since the 2008 financial crisis and the third major bank to go under in less than 2 months. The government seizure of the bank and subsequent sale to J.P. Morgan Chase is helping dodge a full-out crisis. NBC News business and data reporter Brian Chung has been all over this all weekend, right, Brian? Walk us through this deal now. Remind us what this means for folks who have money in First Republic Bank. They're safe, right?
Yeah, they are, and that's because of the government's efforts over the weekend to try to find a buyer alongside close the bank. This was a new playbook that they did not use specifically with the 2 other banks that we were just talking about, Silicon Valley Bank and Signature, which you'll recall about 2 months ago also went under. What the government wanted to do here was say, we're going to take receivership of the bank and then immediately flip the assets to a private market player that could take on the responsibility of carrying over those customers and making sure that they could access their accounts come Monday morning. And it was pretty close to the wire. Only about 6 hours before the market opened on the East Coast did the FDIC announce that J.P. Morgan Chase was going to be buying those assets. For what it's worth, that did preserve the ability of First Republic customers to get their money regardless of whether or not they have more or less than the $250,000 federal guarantee that is assuring depositors that they could get their money back. So again, it seems like a crisis averted. But again, Tom, a very much nervous progression of events events over the last few days.
Oh, well, that's exactly my next question. We've had 3 bank failures so far this year, and Wall Street, as you know, as I know, it often acts on fear rather than facts. Are any other banks at risk right now that we know of?
Yeah, so when the original tremors in the banking market really began, it was with Silicon Valley Bank. And the reason why is because it was one of the most highly concentrated banks in terms of deposit accounts that had above that $250,000 FDIC limit. Signature was another one. When those two went under, all eyes went to the next largest bank with a high percentage of those uninsured deposits, and that was First Republic. Now, the reason why First Republic didn't go under 2 months ago is because of the fact that $30 billion was essentially dropped into it by peer competitor banks like JP Morgan Chase, like PNC, who, by the way, were part of the bids that came in over the weekend to ultimately buy up the bank. So it seems like that $30 billion was a Band-Aid that helped it survive a little bit longer. Some people referred to it as a zombie bank over that period of time. But again, the deposits continued to bleed out of the firm. That's the reason why the government had to close it and try to find another buyer. But as whether or not there's other banks out there, we have to remember these 3 were the largest banks in terms of that concentration of uninsured deposits. So if you think of the forest, the top and the tallest trees were really cold out. We'll have to see if there are others that the market might want to look at as well.
Brian, we benefit from your time at the Fed. Thank you very much. Brian Chung, who remains on the story for us. We are just hours away from a possible labor strike that could mean the end, for now, of some of your favorite TV shows and movies. Negotiations are happening as we speak, but members of the Writers Guild of America are set to go on strike at midnight Pacific time if they don't reach a deal with the studios. A lot of big productions had been planning for something like this. They wrapped up work in anticipation of it. Some live shows, like The Tonight Show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, even SNL, could have to cut their seasons short. Members of the union overwhelmingly approved the strike, with almost 98% voting in favor. Now, you might remember the last time a strike happened was back in 2007. It went on for 100 days, shutting down production, taking countless shows off the air, and costing the industry billions of dollars. NBC's Marissa Parra is in Los Angeles. Marissa, how likely is it that we'll see a strike, and what will viewers notice right off the bat?
Here's the thing. I think after speaking to several people, including one person who's a WGA member who is part of the negotiation team, every single person I've spoken to has said, we will not know. And even right up until the very last second, 11:59 p.m. is that deadline. They could decide to extend the deadline. And there are no indications that we can even guess here. So I think just be prepared to not know until the very last second here. But you saw just how striking, almost 98% of the membership with WGA voted to authorize a strike. And this is something, before we get into what's at stake if they do decide to strike, if that is something that moves forward here, let's talk about what's at stake in terms of why negotiations are happening right now and why they're fighting so hard. So the list of demands really can be summarized with increase in minimum pay. And then they're looking to make sure that with this new world of streaming, they want to make sure that they're able to afford to do what they love to do and regulate the use of AI. So to kind of simplify things here, Tom, with streaming in this new era, it not only changes how we look and watch TV and movies, it changes how those things are made. And so they have typically fewer episodes, longer production time, and they can't go and get other jobs in between that time. So they're getting paid less because they typically get paid per episode. So they really want to change to make sure that they're actually able to afford to do what they love to do. I want to take you to an interview that we had with folks who are in this world, one of the WGA writers.
Streaming is a huge thing. Streaming is everything. And it's dramatically affected the way the studios do business. There's a huge difference in the way you get paid for creating a traditional broadcast show, the way most TV was even 10 years ago, and the way most TV is now.
So, Tom, you asked about what we could potentially see if this strike goes into effect, and you mentioned it. Late night talk shows. That's where we would see the effect first. That's what we saw the last time there was a strike about 15 years ago. We would see an impact on SNL. It could cut seasons short. We saw that the last time as well. When it comes to produced television, there were several seasons, several shows like Scrubs, like The Office that had shorter seasons. And then we're talking about the dollars and cents billions in loss for the industry. That was what we saw this last strike. There's a lot of lessons and things that we learned from that last strike. But when we talk about the overall effect, it would have a ripple effect, because it wouldn't just be the writers that are impacted by this, the ones who have to put the pens down. They can no longer be writing for shows. But think about all of the other people who are involved in production who might very well choose not to cross that picket line. And that's something that we saw in the last strike as well. So that would really, really upend all of Hollywood production. Tom?
Absolutely. And by the way, the parent company of NBC News, NBC, also owns Universal Studios. Marissa Parra, thank you very much. Coming up, another twist in that big Florida feud. Who's planning to sue Disney? In our 5 things, plus the FAA launching new plane paths flying higher to get around congested skies. What this means for your trip this summer, that's after the break. All right, one of the mega bands is calling it quits after more than 50 years and a lot of drama. They're about to walk this way for a final time. You know who it is. That story coming up in our 5 things. But first, tonight the FAA is taking new steps to combat potential chaos in the skies. It's opening nearly 170 faster high-altitude flight routes to avoid congestion on popular paths along the East Coast. That could help smooth things out ahead of a very busy summer travel season. And it comes as American Airlines pilots are picketing across the country, informational only. They just voted overwhelmingly to go on strike if they don't reach a deal on a new contract. If and when that would happen, still TBD. CNBC airline reporter Leslie Josephs joins me now. Leslie, the older flight paths were longer. They sometimes zigzag. That's not productive. It's not fuel efficient. The new routes, though, are based on GPS. That means they can go higher, right?
So these are high-altitude routes, so we're not talking about approach, getting close to the airport. I mean, that's something that the FAA is dealing with anyway. If someone's like flown into New York, you've dealt with that before. These are more routes. There are more possibilities for airlines to fly from point to point. Before, like you said, they had a zig and zag, and this kind of makes it a little bit more custom. You know, you're going from New York to Orlando, let's say, and there'll be a route for that. So it does intend to shave a little bit more time off the skies. And it does intend also to get rid of the congestion. This is some of the most congested airspace in the country that we're talking about.
Yeah, can we keep this map up for an hour so people can understand it? It's awfully complicated. It's on the FAA's website. It's awfully complicated. But Leslie, can you talk also about the American Airlines pilot strike potential, we should say? Is this just a negotiating tactic, or could this really happen?
I mean, the odds of this happening, I would say, are very low. You know, we do not have pilot strikes very often in this country. I think it's been more than a decade at this point. Delta's pilots had also voted to strike or authorize a potential strike just weeks before that they got to an agreement too. So what we're hearing from American Airlines is that they're very close to a pilot deal. We're talking 40% raises over 40 years. These pilots have not had a raise in a long time. And they do say they're kind of in the final stages, just patching up some last-minute things, and they hope to have a deal in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we should make the point. All their competitors have recently signed new labor agreements with their pilots, right? And they all dramatically upped the pay for all their pilots, so American had to catch up. And it seems like it's a negotiating tactic. But Leslie, thank you very much. Leslie Josephs. Let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you might want to know about tonight. Number 1, 5 environmental and cultural heritage groups. Listen to this. They're suing the FAA over that SpaceX launch that exploded in Texas last month. The groups say the agency violated federal policy by not conducting a comprehensive environmental review before launching the biggest rocket ever built. That failed launch blew up SpaceX's launch pad, hurling harmful debris miles away, even starting a large forest fire in that state. Number 2, Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy pledged U.S. support to Israel during his visit to Jerusalem today. McCarthy also said he would invite Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit Washington if President Biden doesn't. The relationship between the two countries, the leaders really, has been strained because of a number of diplomatic issues, including Netanyahu's controversial attempt to curtail the independence of Israel's Supreme Court. Number 3, a federal judge today denied a motion by President Trump's lawyers for a mistrial in the lawsuit that he's facing from E. Jean Carroll. Trump's lawyer accused the judge of, quote, bolstering Carroll's testimony and unfairly siding with her lawyers. Carroll alleges Trump raped her in the 1990s and then defamed her when she wrote about it in recent years. He has denied the allegations. Number 4, the 5-person oversight board that Florida Governor Ron DeSantis set up to oversee Walt Disney World just voted unanimously to sue Disney. It's the latest move in an ongoing fight between Disney and the governor over the company's opposition to his controversial Don't Say Gay bill. The vote comes just a week after Disney filed its own lawsuit against DeSantis and the Oversight Board. Number 5, Aerosmith says it's about to dream on, going on a farewell tour. After more than 50 years together, they will play 40 shows across the U.S. and Canada starting this September as part of their Peace Out tour. The legendary rock band has won 4 Grammys, played the Super Bowl, even had a themed roller coaster in Disney World back in the 90s. When we come back, a Montana state lawmaker is suing after getting censored by House Republicans. How she is making her case, that story coming up next. The so-called godfather of AI now has a warning about the kind of technology he helped pioneer. What he's worried about with AI later in the hour. But first, for us, Montana's first transgender state legislator today says she is suing the state after she was censored and removed from the House floor, she claims, for speaking up for the rights of trans people. In a tweet announcing the suit, State Rep. Zooey Zephyr said, quote, "The recent actions violate my First Amendment rights as well as the rights of my 11,000 constituents to representation." We've been covering this story on the show for some time now. Some of Zephyr's supporters were arrested after entering the chamber last Monday. And on Wednesday, Zephyr was removed by a vote from the legislature. Meanwhile, she will not be allowed to enter or speak on the House floor for the rest of the current session, which ends later this week. NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos joins me now. Danny, does Zephyr have a strong case here, or is her removal really the prerogative of the majority in the legislature?
This looks to be a case of first impression, and for that reason, it may end up being a coin flip. On the one hand, anytime the government interferes with someone's speech rights, you have a potential First Amendment violation. But on the other hand, Montana's Constitution explicitly provides that the legislature can discipline its own members. Now, what exactly that means and in what conditions or situations, the Constitution, as is the case with the federal Constitution, is really light on specifics, and it leaves it up to the courts to figure it out. But if it's true that the legislature has plenary authority to discipline its members, including for what they say, then this lawsuit may be on shaky ground. On the other hand, if the First Amendment trumps all, then this lawsuit, this case, may survive.
All right. Well, I think you've kind of set this up perfectly. Does this end up in court, or might we see some sort of an agreement worked out?
This is not the kind of lawsuit that seeks a bunch of money damages for an injury. Instead, it's the kind that seeks injunctive relief, forcing the legislature or preventing them from stopping this representative from speaking. So the court will look at these particular facts and have to make what I think is a difficult decision. And one thing the complaint points out, by the way, is that language like saying blood on your hands is it's not strange or new or novel language in legislatures, particularly state legislatures. So this is the kind of speech that has been seen before and arguably not censured, not punished. Now, that may not be preclusive or even controlling on this court, but it certainly is interesting and something I think the court should end up taking a look at.
Danny Ceballos, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now we want to bring you the original with in-depth reporting on a topic we have been watching. Today, a Missouri judge decided to temporarily block a sweeping rule by the state's attorney general to restrict access to gender-affirming health care in the state for kids and adults. The decision comes after the ACLU and the Lambda Legal Society sued to stop Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey's order. The group says the rule is discriminatory and an overreach of the AG's authority. Bailey's efforts are happening as we're seeing more than 100 anti-LGBTQ bills proposed across the country, many of them aimed at restricting gender-affirming care for trans children. Trans rights supporters warn there's a growing effort to limit access for adults, too. NBC's Shaq Brewster reports.
It's care that could mean the difference between life and death. I don't think life-saving is an exaggeration at all.
Those are life-saving.
It's life-saving care.
35-year-old Errol Royston lives in St. Louis. He says he's been on testosterone for 8 years now. When he heard about an emergency order filed by Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, he says he felt like it was an attack on trans people.
So my mind is trying to comprehend all of it. So the first part was anger. The second part was just how do I help my community? Then thirdly, it was what am I going to do?
Legal experts say Bailey's order, if put in place, will be the first of its kind restricting access to gender-affirming care for all trans people in the state, including adults.
No government official or legislator in the United States has gone as far as trying to stop adults from accessing care.
Requiring those seeking gender-affirming care in Missouri to meet a list of criteria before getting treatment. It includes 15 one-hour-long therapy sessions over the course of at least 18 months and having any mental health issues treated and resolved. The rule excludes people who are currently getting treatments as long as they and their doctors comply with the new rules.
When human rights are under attack, what do we do?
In a statement to NBC News, the Missouri Attorney General's office said in part, "We will continue fighting for all patients to have access to adequate health care." Across the country, legislation limiting or banning gender-affirming care has largely centered around children, with at least 12 states passing laws this year. But rights groups worry efforts are now moving beyond minors and increasingly on patients over 18.
There is a concerted effort here to erase trans people from public life. His rule would go into the doctor's offices of adults and interfere with the ability of adults and their doctors to make medical decisions.
These 7 states have bans on Medicaid coverage for gender-affirming care. And in at least 5 states, Republican lawmakers have introduced bills to limit access to gender care for minors and young adults, in some cases for people as old as 26. But studies have shown that transition care can be life-changing for trans adults. According to research published by the NIH, gender-affirming hormone therapy had a positive psychological, physical, and social impact on transgender individuals.
The biggest farce is identifying the treatment as experimental. We're not looking at true outcomes. Reduced suicide, reduced anxiety, reduced depression. Those are life-saving.
For Royston, having the access to his treatments has made all the difference.
If I was not able to get that care to be who I am today, I probably wouldn't be here. If I could have transitioned early in life, there's no telling where I'd be now. I'd be rich somewhere because I'd have nothing holding me back.
NBC's Shaq Brewster joins me now. You know, Shaq, I've heard that from multiple people that this kind of care truly saves their life, in their opinion. So what else can you tell us about this ruling today that we received out of Missouri?
Well, the court's temporary restraining order will block, or at least temporarily block, the Attorney General's order until at least May 15th. You can expect a couple of days before then to see both parties in court to actually go through and litigate the actual merits of the lawsuit. In the judge's ruling today, the ruling from the circuit judge, she wrote that that those suing to block this order, quote, will be subjected to immediate and irreparable loss, damage, or injury. She went on to say plaintiffs, the current patients, are at high risk of having their medical care interrupted for an unknown length of time. That's what she did to explain her ruling, putting on this temporary hold. And we should note that NBC News did reach out to the Attorney General's office to see if they had any response to the idea that their order is an attack on trans people. We have not heard any direct response just yet, Tom.
You know, to your point, this does affect both kids and adults who identify as trans, but Missouri is a pretty red state. Does the AG have popular support in the state?
There's certainly a lot of criticism. I mean, this is an issue, and you heard the number of laws that have been proposed in Missouri. So there are advocates for this, but when you listen to some of the families, they describe what has been called a dystopian situation, a dystopian condition for raising trans families in that state. I want you to listen to what we heard from one family, because others that we talked to, they said they're considering moving. They're considering stockpiling medicine. I want you to listen to one family that we talked to for this story.
I've been so much happier since I've started this medicine. My gender dysphoria is mostly gone. I've got a great supportive circle.
It's a new person. So we had, a kid before, but now we have a happy child that is flourishing.
Chelsea is in that point where she's looking for colleges right now. She says she does not plan to attend college in Missouri or any red state that has these restrictions. It's just another example that we're not just talking about policy, but you're really seeing the impact it's having on specific individuals, Tom.
Yep. Shaq, thank you very much. Good reporting. Thank you, sir. Coming up, workers at a Maine restaurant thought they were getting a shipment of mugs. What they got instead put one man in jail. It's not mugs. That's later in the local. All right, this is a big red flag. The so-called godfather of artificial intelligence is leaving his job at Google so he can talk openly about what he says are the real dangers of the technology that he helped create. Jeffrey Hinton is telling the New York Times he believes this technology poses a real threat to humanity. A threat to humanity, he says. He says it's hard to see how you can prevent bad actors from using it for bad things. Hinton later clarified on Twitter that he did not leave Google because he thought Google was one of those bad actors, just so he could talk freely about the AI threats as he sees them. NBC Digital tech reporter Dave Ingram joins me now to talk about this. Dave, Hinton is not a household name, so help us fit him into the broader AI ecosystem, and what are his concerns? That AI can take over the world?
Yeah, Tom, so you mentioned his nickname, the godfather of AI. I think it's probably more accurate to call him kind of a founding father in the sense that he's one of a very few number of people who have been at the highest level of AI research over the last 30 years or so. He, just to give you a little sense of his bio, he was a long-time academic. He worked at several universities. He later founded a startup that he sold to Google, and then he ended up going there to work in their AI research area. He won the Turing Prize, which is named for Alan Turing, founding another sort of founder of AI theory back in the 40s. It's kind of the Nobel Prize for AI and computer science. So this is a major step for him to step away from Google and list these concerns. He talked a little bit about that in his interview with the New York Times, where he said that he thought that eventually these AI systems could be smarter than humans, but he had thought it was going to be 30 to 50 years off. And he thinks that's not true anymore, that it's going to be potentially much sooner that they'll be that advanced.
So he's brilliant, he is rich, he's the one who helped invent this. How is Google responding to his comments?
Google is taking it, I guess, what you might say, as kind of a stirring upper lip. They released a statement from Jeff Dean. He's the head of their AI effort, and they said that they essentially wish him luck, and he's been a valuable member of their team. Did not disparage him in any way. Said that he is that Google is standing by its practices, which it already considers to be an ethical system to approach AI research.
Have you seen any broader pushback to the wider spread of AI? I mean, it does seem that alarm bells are starting to go off here. We've heard it from Elon Musk and others.
Yeah, there are hundreds, really, of AI researchers who are concerned about where this is going. Even those who are pushing to move faster acknowledge that there are real dangers here. Just to give you a real quick sense of what the danger is, some of these AI systems now not only can they learn on their own, which is kind of the whole idea of AI, but they can learn how to, they sometimes make decisions that are unexpected or learn things that their creators didn't intend for them to learn, and even implement new computer code on the machines that they're running. So much more to see here.
I mean, this is literally HAL from a 2001 Space Odyssey, right? I mean, literally, the computer is making its own decisions, and maybe contrary to what humans want.
I hope not, but the other character in that scene was named Dave as well, so let's hope we never get to the HAL point.
That's right, Dave. Okay, Dave Ingram, thanks very much. NBC covers hundreds of stories each day, and because you could not possibly read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureau teams have done it for you and for me. So this is what they tell us is going down in their regions. We like to call this segment the local. From our Northeast Bureau, jury selection beginning today in the trial of the limo company operator involved in one of the deadliest road wrecks in 2 decades. Remember, about 5 years ago, a stretch limo crash killed 20 people in New York. State police said the vehicle had been ordered out of service a month before the crash. The company's operator facing dozens of charges of second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide. From our Midwest Bureau, Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot is asking Texas Governor Greg Abbott to stop busing migrants to Chicago. She's calling it inhumane and dangerous in a new letter. Her office says more than 8,000 migrants have been sent to Chicago since Abbott started doing this back in August. Governor Abbott says he won't stop until President Biden addresses the crisis, his words, at the southern border. From our Northeast Bureau, employees at a restaurant in Maine opened a large wooden crate. They thought it was a shipment of mugs. Instead, they found about 31 pounds of fentanyl. Price, $3 million. The shipping label had the restaurant's address, but the name of somebody who didn't work there. Employees contacted the police an hour later. The man whose name was on the package, he showed up looking for his package. He was busted, as you would expect. Still to come, singer Ed Sheeran is back in court today in that copyright lawsuit trial. What he said and what he sang on the stand. That story's coming up next. We're back in New York City today. Pop star Ed Sheeran was back in court, playing his guitar on the stand in day 5 of the copyright lawsuit trial over Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. Now look at this. Our NBC producer in the room tells us Sheeran played a mashup of his songs and Marvin Gaye's songs to try and show how common the chords played in both songs really are. And here's Sheeran just leaving court in the last few minutes. He's accused of copying the chord progression on his song Thinking Out Loud from Let's Get It On. Accusations he denies. NBC's Rahema Ellis joins me now. Rahema, what more are we learning about what is going down in this courtroom today? Did you like that? Was Sheeran compelling?
I would think some people would say so. When he was asked by his defense attorney what he thought about the musicologist who testified that there was some copying going on here, Sheeran said what he's done is criminal, don't know why he's allowed to be an expert. More of what he had to say in the full screen, Sheeran said to have someone come in and say, we don't believe you, you must have stole it, he finds it insulting. And his defense attorney went on to ask Sheeran what he would do if the plaintiffs win. Sheeran said, if that happens, I'm done. Pretty dramatic statement. We don't have the rest of what he said beyond that, but that in itself is pretty powerful. Tom?
All right, Rahema, thank you very much. To be continued tomorrow, I guess. That's a wrap for this hour. The coverage on News Now picks up right now. Here we go, top of the hour again, and we are starting with that gunman who is still on the loose in Texas. He is armed. He is dangerous. He is nowhere to be found. The FBI says it has no leads right now. As a community mourns 5 people killed, including a 9-year-old, we are live on the ground in Texas. Plus, an NBC News exclusive. The Pentagon is tracking a new mysterious balloon. It just left Hawaiian airspace and does not seem like a threat. We will break all of that down about what we know. Plus, the clock is ticking for Hollywood studios and writers to find a deal, what they're fighting for, and what it might mean for the shows you watch. And new steps by the FAA to try to make this year's travel season easier. How? By letting planes fly higher and more direct. And in tonight's original, how some states are trying to limit access to critical gender-affirming care, not just for kids, but also for trans adults. We will tell you about a key ruling out of Missouri that might slow that down. That's later in the show. Good day. I'm Tom Costello. I'm in for Hallie. And 3 days after a man executed 5 people. 5 people, including a 9-year-old child in a Houston suburb. Police have no idea where he is. 0 leads, they say, according to the FBI. There are aerial photos right there that we're getting from the manhunt. Police have been getting reports of a possible match to the suspect in nearby Montgomery County, Texas. More than 250 officers from local, state, and federal agencies are a part of this push, this search. They're looking for this man, 38-year-old Francisco Oropesa. Police say he is armed and dangerous, and they're offering an $80,000 reward for him. Now, here's what we know about him. He's a Mexican national who has been deported as well, 4 times already. Police believe Oropesa may have been intoxicated during the attack and may have a prior drunk driving conviction. He has a rather distinct tattoo on his left forearm, and he is suspected of killing these 5 people: Sonia Guzman, Diana Alvarado, Luisa Rivera, also Jose Casares, and 9-year-old Danielle Lasso. Why? Because the family asked him to stop shooting his AR-15 in the front yard because he was keeping their infant awake. The man you see crying, he lost his wife, Sonia, and his son, Danielle, in this senseless attack. NBC's Priscilla Thompson is in Cleveland, Texas. Priscilla, can you give us an update now? People still wondering any word at all where the suspect may be.
Tom, no word yet. We have seen signs like this one going up throughout the community, and that does appear to be working. We know that police have gotten several tips today that have actually led them to go out and search specific areas where there have been reported sightings. But so far, the suspect remains at large. And a big question for some people right now is, how did we get here? How have they not yet found him? When we spoke to police on Saturday, they sounded very confident that they were closing in on the suspect, and they believed that they were. They were out here in a wooded area not far from where we are now. They had heat-sensing drones. They had dogs. They had officers on horseback searching that area, tracking him. They had been in touch with a witness who had been in contact with him. But we now know that all that police found in that wooded area was an abandoned cell phone and clothing. And shortly after that, the dogs lost his scent. And so now officials are turning to the public, asking anyone with information to come forward. The FBI saying they believe that the suspect may begin reaching out to friends and again issuing that $80,000 reward to see if they can get anyone to come forward with a credible lead that could lead to an arrest. But for now, officials continuing to say that they do not have much to go on here. Tom?
We also know that he was deported 5 times. We think he's a national of Honduras, right? What else can you tell us about the victims?
Yeah, so we believe police have said that he is a Mexican national. They found a Mexican consulate card on him, but police have said that the victims are believed to be Honduran nationals, although we don't know their exact immigration status. And but what we know about them, or what I've heard about them, has come from the father of the 9-year-old boy, and that father's name, Wilson Garcia. And he talked to me about what they did in the moments when that suspect approached the house and began shooting. That his wife was one of the first people killed, and one of her last words to him was to try to get out to save himself so that their other kids might still have a parent. He tells me that their 9-year-old son ran over to the mom to try to protect her, and he was also ultimately gunned down, and that the 2 women that were killed, Diana Alvarado and Julissa Rivera, covered other children. There were children found covered in blood, but they were shielded by the bodies of those women, trying to protect them from this senseless violence. Tom?
All right, Priscilla, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Now to some breaking news and an NBC News exclusive. The U.S. military tracking another mysterious balloon that flew over American soil. 3 U.S. officials tell us the object flew across portions of Hawaii, though not over sensitive areas like military bases, and they do not believe it poses any risk to aviation traffic or national security. You'll remember a Chinese spy balloon that took a trip over the United States back in February was shot down. NBC's Courtney Cubey broke the story, and she joins me now. Courtney, give us an update. What's the latest on this balloon? We still don't believe that it is military, right?
That's right. So the U.S. doesn't know who owns this thing, frankly, or where it came from, or what its purpose is. But U.S. officials are saying they do not believe that it is another Chinese surveillance balloon. So what we know, it flew over parts of Hawaii, as you mentioned. The U.S. military has been tracking it since late last week. It is not maneuverable. It does not appear to have any propulsion system, meaning that it doesn't seem that there's someone who's able to actually fly it. It's the wind that's helping it drift along. it's not a threat to air traffic, civilian aviation, even though officials are saying that it's flying at about 36,000 feet. I'm moving right into your world here, Tom. So I don't really understand why at that altitude, where there clearly is civilian aviation, the military is confident that it's not a threat. But they're also saying it's not a threat to national security. And again, they don't know who is flying this thing or who actually is the first one to put it up in the air. But they're saying they don't believe that it is a threat or another surveillance balloon like the one we saw earlier this year that the U.S. military ultimately shot down. Now, taking all those things into consideration, we got a statement late today from a DoD spokesperson, Department of Defense spokesperson, saying that all of that factored together, Secretary of Defense, in conjunction with U.S. military leaders, decided that they did not need to take action against this balloon right now. But the U.S. military, along with the FAA, will continue to monitor it in the future, even though it's now out of Hawaiian airspace, Tom.
You know, when you and I were dealing with this a couple of months ago, and I talked to pilots who said, you know, we see balloons a lot. And I was surprised at that. They say we see balloons at altitude, and usually they're not any big deal to us because they just bounce off the cockpit. If they get ingested into the engine, it's a pretty minor issue. It's not like hitting a big bird. But I think we've all been struck by how many balloons are up there, right? University research balloons, weather balloons, whatever.
And it's not just that. Some of these balloons are larger. So in the case of the Chinese surveillance balloon, remember, it was described to us that it was about the size of 3 school buses. Now, many of these other ones are nowhere near that size, but we do hear about balloons that are the size of a small vehicle. So that's extremely large when you consider an aircraft flying at altitude at a high rate of speed going towards something, especially if it has any kind of a payload. We know that this new one that the U.S. is tracking does have some sort of a payload. It's just not really clear how big it is or, again, what exactly it may be collecting. The U.S. military or U.S. officials are telling us that it doesn't seem to be emitting any signals. It doesn't seem to be communicating, but we just don't really know what it's up there doing, Tom.
Okay, but right now, no plans to shoot it down.
At this point, but U.S. officials are keeping open that possibility if it nears U.S. soil or nears land.
Okay, Courtney Cubie, thank you very much. Other news, water levels along parts of the Mississippi River are peaking today. But when they start to recede, what damage might there be? That's the big question for folks in low-lying areas. As flood crests are hitting more than 21 feet. Look at that. Bags are already stacked up, sandbags stacked up in Bettendorf, right outside of Davenport, Iowa. Water levels in the area, they're among the 10 highest on record, and we're seeing more severe weather around the country. This dust storm caused a big pileup on Interstate 55 in Illinois. In the last 10 minutes or so, we've now learned police are saying 6 people are dead, more than 30 hurt in that crash. Very strong tornadoes slammed Virginia Beach, destroying nearly 100 homes. Thankfully, no reports of any injuries there. And what better way to bring in May than snow, of course? All across Wisconsin, light flurry, but it's still a snowstorm nonetheless. Let's talk about all of this with Bill Cairns and also with Jesse Kirsch on the ground in Davenport, Iowa. Jesse, again, we're watching this water rise. And as you and I have talked about for a couple of days now, they know to expect this in that part of the state, right?
Yeah, and certainly not this high, Tom. This is not an every year occurrence. The last big one that they talked about here in Davenport is in 2019. We are still waiting for official word that the water has officially reached its highest point here off of the Mississippi. It's expected to have crested sometime this afternoon, but our team, our climate unit, is watching for the data coming in so that we know for sure that it's happened. You can see behind me what should be a portion of downtown riverfront Davenport. It's now just an extension of the Mississippi River. But as you mentioned, people are used to this here. They are used to flooding. It happens in the spring here. And for some of the people we've talked to, it's a worthwhile price to pay to have scenery and the beauty of living along the riverfront for most of the year.
You know, you and I were talking on Friday, and I think I asked you, why haven't they put up a wall to prevent the flooding if they know that this can happen? And I think you just hinted at the answer here, because they love the view and therefore they're willing to put up with a little flooding. Is that it?
Yeah, that's a piece of it. Also, frankly, Tom, it's expensive to build a flood wall. North of here is another city, Dubuque, Iowa. We went there decades ago. That city put up a flood wall, the mayor tells me, and because of it, we saw firsthand downtown was dry. There are still communities over there that were flooded, at least partially as well. But the downtown portion of the city and some of the industrial area we were shown by the mayor was dry. Contrast that with this. There is no flood wall here, and to do it now, the mayor tells me, would be an obscenely expensive cost and something that wouldn't make sense compared to what it costs them to just put up their mitigation measures and then to do cleanup. The mayor says most of the cost for them during flooding here is labor, because they already have the equipment. They already know what they're doing. They just need to have the manpower out there. They have people monitoring throughout the night and in the early morning. The mayor says the pumps that they have working throughout parts of downtown. So that's really the most expensive part for them. And he put that in the ballpark of hundreds of thousands of dollars compared to what he says would be millions upon millions of dollars. He didn't even really have a full number, but hundreds of millions of dollars was his rough estimate to put up a true flood wall. And there's also that beauty component of it. Some people don't want to be blocking this off. They are working on other mitigation measures here. But by and large, from what we've heard from people here, Tom, is it's one of those things that they know is coming and they're okay with it because they love where they live.
Yeah, but you've still got a wet basement. That's tough. Jesse, thank you very much. Hey, Bill Cairns, can I ask you how much of this flooding is because they got so much snow in the upper Midwest, and now they're about to get even more up there, right?
I'd say about 80%. I mean, it hasn't rained that much in the northern portions of the Dakotas or Wisconsin. It's mostly just keeps snowing. And that's just minor stuff you look at there. Green Bay had 1.5 inches. But if you want the real snow, you have to go to the upper peninsula of Michigan. Many reports of 10 to as much as 14 inches of snow. So that's the minor stuff. There's other people that aren't as happy. And that's mostly because the temperatures north of Green Bay up here in the 30s. It even snowed during the day today, but it really accumulated last night. And they're not done yet. They're going to continue to get more snow. And we continue to see, these aren't the temperatures. These are the wind gusts. It's a very windy day in the Great Lakes. We had that horrific car accident on Interstate 55, about 60 miles to the northeast of St. Louis. That was right here, right located just outside of Taylorville. It is still gusting to 40 miles per hour. And this is one of the strangest, most unusual reasons that I've ever seen for a car accident. I mean, we've had dust storms before. You get ice, you get snow. Those are all reasons we get pileups. This was because of farming operations. It hasn't rained in Illinois in a couple days, but the soil's not that dry. They're not in a drought. But because the farmers were tilling the soil and loosening it up, and then this windstorm came in, that's what picked up all this fine dust particles and made the roads, almost zero visibility at times. And this 100-car pileup, multiple fatalities took place this afternoon. Just a horrific series of events on Interstate 55, which are still trying to clean up at this hour. So that will improve as the winds die down a little bit later on tonight. Temperatures are still chilly. We're still going to get additional snow out. On this map, I was hoping that we were done with this. The blue shows you where it's snowing. This is the Upper Peninsula here. The green shows you the cold, chilly rain. Chicago, it's been a raw, nasty day. Indianapolis, not much better. Cleveland, Columbus to Pittsburgh. And this will continue for at least another couple days as our storm slowly tonight pushes towards New England. All overnight tonight, and especially during the afternoon tomorrow, not pretty. Columbus to Pennsylvania, not as much snow. The only areas that will get significant snow will be the higher elevations, especially in West Virginia. And then finally, by Thursday, this mess will be out of here. The rest of the country looks pretty good, Tom. Out west, it continues to be dry and near record highs, a big contrast from the snowy northern Great Lakes.
Yeah, and here in D.C., we're like 12 degrees below normal for this week, so go figure. Bill, thank you very much. We've got some breaking news. President Biden is inviting the so-called Big Four congressional leaders to the White House to have a conversation about the debt limit. The meeting is going to happen May 9th. This just hours after Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen announced make that a June 1st deadline, June 1st, before the U.S. defaults on its debt. What you see on the screen is just some of what could happen if the U.S. goes into default, including running out of cash on hand. That means the government can't pay for things like Social Security, employees' salaries, or even keeping the lights on. It could also send markets into a tumble and cause interest rates to soar. NBC's Hallie Rafa joins me now. Hallie, Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, they both say they want a clean debt ceiling passed. In other words, no strings attached. But is this meeting a sign that the White House knows that isn't going to happen and they are on shaky ground now?
Yeah, Tom, it'd be easy to assume that based on this outreach that we learned of from President Biden. But a White House official in this new statement is being very careful to distinguish this outreach from what the White House is hoping to get out of this. They're saying in this new statement, quote, President Biden will stress that Congress must take action to avoid default without conditions, and invited the four leaders to the White House to discuss the urgency of preventing default, as well as how to initiate a separate process to to address the budget and fiscal year 2024 appropriations. That's very careful wording to stress that what the White House has really always demanded, while still mentioning the need to pass that 2024 budget, which they say will be separate. And this is what the president has said all along, that this passage of this raising of the debt ceiling should be passed without strings attached, without conditions, and that any sort of spending cuts that Republicans want could be negotiated later on. Those spending cuts that Republicans want would be to key pieces of President Biden's legislation, an agenda that had passed in the last 2 years. What could have been a motivating factor for this outreach we learned of from President Biden could be this new letter that we know of from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen that she released earlier today, where that timeline for default becomes more clear. She said it could happen as early as June 1st, that the country could go into default if the debt ceiling is not raised. Remember, she has said that she's resorted to extraordinary measures to make sure that the U.S.'s bills continue to be paid while we wait for this negotiation to play out. The gut check here, though, is even though there has been this outreach, that doesn't mean there's a deal here. It's widely believed that there's going to have to be some sort of bending from both sides to get some deal across the finish line here, Tom. So what's going to be interesting to see is how exactly and how much each side ends up bending to get this through.
Yep. So 30 days and counting until we get to that June 1st deadline. Hallie, thank you very much. We are learning tonight that another American has been killed in Ukraine, that according to the State Department. Meanwhile, Russia launched another wave of attacks overnight across Ukraine. Local government officials say at least 34 people were hurt, including 5 children. Most of the country woke up to the sound of air raid sirens, with the attacks causing huge fires in a city in the east and damaging dozens of homes. Recent strikes have hit relatively calm cities far from the front lines, and this is the second wave of strikes across the country in just 3 days, as Moscow anticipates a Ukrainian counteroffensive could begin soon. NBC's Ellison Barber is in Kharkiv. Ellison, what more can you tell us about these latest attacks? Is this a preview of what is to come from Russia?
You know, Russia has carried out these waves of cruise missile attacks in places very far often from the front lines in the past, but we haven't seen them do this since March of this year. So they've taken a bit of a pause. They say the 2 massive strikes carried out in the last 3 days, that they were specifically targeting a military-related infrastructure, things that had housed reserve units or places where there were storage units of ammo, weapons, military equipment, things like that. But what we've seen is a lot of civilian bloodshed. What you're looking at right now is the aftermath of this morning's strikes in the Dnipro region. There, 34 people were injured, among them a number of children. The regional governor there says this was a residential area and a lot of homes were damaged. The UK's Ministry of Defense, they have said that Russia often operates an inefficient targeting system, and that they prioritize perceived military necessity over preventing collateral damage. On Friday, one of the strikes that we saw, and we were on the ground for it in the city of Uman, it was a residential apartment building, 9 stories, that was just flattened almost. At least one side of it was completely gone when a missile hit that building. There was nothing we could see in the area to indicate that there was any sort of military activity there. Ukrainian officials have accused Russia of purposely targeting residential areas to try to scare civilians. We saw them do a lot of this over the winter when they were targeting electrical infrastructure. That, Tom, was part of a Russian military doctrine where they envisioned striking critical infrastructure, hoping to make civilians uncomfortable, frustrated, and then the leaders of those people to capitulate to their demands. Tom?
Yeah. Well, either it is deliberate or their military is inept, or both. But this weekend, families in the city of Uman said their final goodbyes to some of the youngest victims of a strike there, right? That happened on Friday, as we were talking about.
Yeah, I think the video of one of the funeral services really tells you about the grief in that community. This is one family burying 2 children, an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old. You see all of these people coming by to pay their respect. You'll soon see a little boy wearing an orange jacket crying next to the casket. Those were his 2 siblings. The father of these children told local media he was working. He came back and opened the door to check into that room to see where the children were. And the entire room, Tom, was gone.
Okay, Ellison, you have a hard job. Thank you very much. Ellison Barber on the ground in Kharkiv. On Wall Street, the markets closed near the flat line today after the news of J.P. Morgan Chase's takeover of troubled First Republic Bank. That's the second largest bank failure in U.S. history. Here's a look at how the board shaped up today. The major indices moved lower by just a fraction of a percent in really just the last 2 hours or so of trading. But J.P. Morgan Chase stock is up just over 2% after it took over First Republic. And it's not just Wall Street reacting. President Biden says the FDIC and J.P. Morgan action will actually keep the banking system safe. Take a listen.
And so let me be very clear. While depositors are being protected, shareholders are losing their investments. And critically, taxpayers are not the ones that are on the hook.
The fall of First Republic is the largest lender collapse since the 2008 financial crisis, and also the third major bank to go under in less than 2 months. The government seizure of the bank and the subsequent sale to J.P. Morgan Chase really helping to dodge a full-out crisis. NBC News business and data reporter Brian Chung joins me now. I don't think you got much sleep overnight, did you, Brian?
Not a lot, no.
Not a lot. So walk us through this deal that came together overnight and remind us what this means for people who have their money in the bank in First Republic.
Yeah, well, the reason why there might be some eye bags is because the announcement came around 3:30 a.m. Eastern time, and it was an abrupt announcement saying that the FDIC and the government was going to come in, close the San Francisco-based First Republic Bank, and then simultaneously have J.P. Morgan Chase, the nation's largest bank, come in, swoop in, and buy substantially all of the assets of the former First Republic Bank. Now, what that means is that customers of First Republic Bank are now customers of Chase Bank. Those ATMs and the bank branches will have to change the signs relatively shortly. But overall, this just underscores how the banking industry concerns that cropped up in mid-March when Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank failed are not yet quite over. First Republic had gotten a lot of scrutiny at that time as well. And we have to remember that the only reason why they even hobbled along for the next few weeks was because of a $30 billion infusion from its peer banks. And Tom, one of those banks was J.P. Morgan Chase.
Yeah, and again, so the bank has been bought by J.P. Morgan Chase. But were there any signs of people lining up outside the banks today, nervous to get their money, or were they pretty confident they're covered?
Yeah, well, when it comes to just what happened today, we have to remember that the customers of First Republic are now just customers of Chase. There's no reason to think that the $250,000 limit is applicable or relevant in this case because another bank now owns this bank. So the government is not holding the bag here, is not trying to cap the amount of money that people can pull out of the bank because it's not a failed bank that's under receivership at the FDIC. It's just simply another arm of J.P. Morgan Chase. So there shouldn't have been any lines today because, again, these customers are just like any other Chase customer prior to this week.
Not only that, they were bought by the biggest bank, right? So their money is a heck of a lot more secure today. Brian, thank you very much. Brian Chung. We are just hours away now from a possible labor strike that could mean the end, for some anyway, for some of your favorite TV shows and movies. Negotiations are happening as we speak. But members of the Writers Guild of America are set to go on strike at midnight Pacific time if they don't reach a deal with the studios. NBC Universal, which owns this network, is one of those studios. While a lot of big productions have been planning for something like this and wrapped up their work in anticipation of it, some live shows like The Tonight Show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, even SNL could have to cut their seasons short. Members of the union overwhelmingly approved the strike. 98%, nearly 98% voted in favor. You might remember the last time a strike happened was back in 2007. It went on for 100 days, shutting down production, taking countless shows off the air. The network scrambled to try to figure out what to run, and then it cost the industry billions. NBC's Marissa Parra is in Los Angeles covering all of this. Marissa, the surge in streaming is really the big reason for this, right? So what do both sides think would be fair, since this all comes down to the demand from streaming?
Right. So let's talk about the players here. You have the union representing the Hollywood writers, and then you have the alliance representing the studios that they write for. Now, that alliance has remained relatively tight-lipped. They've released just a couple of short statements, really just saying that they're looking to negotiate a fair deal here, that they're confident that that will happen. But the union representing the writers has been very vocal. Those writers have been very vocal. Take a look at the list of demands among many that they're asking for: increased pay, a standardization when it comes to streaming, and and regulating the use of artificial intelligence. But streaming really is the big headline of this latest round of negotiations. That's a big, big change from the last time there was a writer's strike about 15 years ago. We spoke to several writers. You're about to hear from one about how and why streaming really is such a big deal this time around.
Streaming is a huge thing. Streaming is everything. And it's dramatically affected the way the studios do business. There's a huge difference in the way you get paid for creating a traditional broadcast show, the way most TV was even 10 years ago, and the way most TV is now.
So broadly speaking, just to piggyback off of that, the way it's been explained to me is that most of the time writers get paid per episode. But with streaming, they tend to have fewer episodes and they take longer to make. And with a longer production time, they're not able to go and get other jobs. So ultimately, they're getting paid less. And they said there just really isn't a standard in this new world. So, Tom, this is something that they're saying they're trying to look out for not only the current writers of today, but looking out for writers 10 years from now. And that applies to artificial intelligence as well.
That really helps explain things, but you just set up and you talked about artificial intelligence and the threat posed by potentially computers writing this stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, I don't know if there's really a job out there that isn't safe from the capabilities of artificial intelligence. Writers are definitely looking towards the future. What's really interesting, when you look at the writer's strike 15 years ago, they saw streaming out on the horizon. They saw that this was something that was growing, the possibilities of the digital age, but they didn't really know that it would become what it is today. So they said, and the writers I've spoken to, including one who's in the negotiating room, they said that they're trying to do the same thing, look out into the horizon. They see the writing on the wall, literally, that there's AI like ChatGPT, which can craft incredible stories that are so believable that what writers really want to get ahead of is they want to create a regulation so that their jobs are not threatened by the capabilities of artificial intelligence, able to do what they are also able to do.
Yep, it is disturbing. Marissa Parra, thank you very much. Coming up from us, Virginia police say 2 inmates are on the run after escaping from jail today. What we know about that search next. Plus, the stars are hitting the red carpet at the Met Gala as we speak. But there's some controversy around this year's theme. We're going to explain that when we come back in our 5 Things. Stay with us. We're back. Barbie is adding one more to their Inspiring Women series of dolls. We'll tell you who that is coming up in our 5 Things. But first, tonight the FAA is taking new steps to combat potential chaos over the summer in the skies. It's opening nearly 170 faster high-altitude flight routes to avoid congestion on popular routes along the East Coast. That could help smooth things along ahead of the busy travel season. And it comes as American Airlines pilots are picketing across the country. They just voted overwhelmingly to go on strike if they don't reach a deal on a new contract. If and when that would happen, still TBD. CNBC airline reporter Leslie Josephs joins me now. Leslie, the older flight paths were longer. They sometimes zigzagged. That's not productive. It's not fuel efficient. The new routes, though, are based on GPS. That means they can go higher, right?
So these are high-altitude routes, so we're not talking about approach, getting close to the airport. I mean, that's something that the FAA is dealing with anyway. If someone's like flown into New York, you've dealt with that before. These are more routes. There are more possibilities for airlines to fly from point to point. Before, like you said, they had a zig and zag, and this kind of makes it a little bit more custom. You know, you're going from New York to Orlando, let's say, and there'll be a route for that. So it does intend to shave a little bit more time off the skies, and it does intend also to get rid of the congestion. This is some of the most congested airspace in the country that we're talking about.
Yeah, can we keep this map up for an hour so people can understand it? It's awfully complicated. It's on the FAA's website. It's awfully complicated. But Leslie, can you talk also about the American Airlines pilot strike, potential, we should say? Is this just a negotiating tactic, or could this really happen?
I mean, The odds of this happening, I would say, are very low. You know, we do not have pilot strikes very often in this country. I think it's been more than a decade at this point. Delta's pilots had also voted to strike or authorize a potential strike just weeks before that they got to an agreement too. So what we're hearing from American Airlines is that they're very close to a pilot deal. We're talking 40% raises over 40 years. These pilots have not had a raise in a long time, and they do say they're kind of in the final stages, just patching up some last-minute things, and they hope to have a deal in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we should make the point. All their competitors have recently signed new labor agreements with their pilots, right? And they all dramatically up the pay for all their pilots, so American had to catch up. And it seems like it's a negotiating tactic. But Leslie, thank you very much. Leslie Josephs. All right, let's get you over now to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, 2 men have escaped from a jail in Virginia. One of them is reportedly wanted for the murder of a sheriff's deputy. The jail superintendent said the inmates escaped several hours apart from each other on Sunday. The county sheriff's office says it got notified about their escape this morning. They've begun a search using dogs and drones. So far, they have not turned up a trace of either man. Number 2, a federal judge today denied a motion by President Trump's lawyers for a mistrial in the lawsuit that he is facing from E. Jean Carroll. Trump's lawyer accused the judge of bolstering Carroll's testimony and unfairly siding with her lawyers. Carroll alleges Trump raped her back in the 1990s and then defamed her when she wrote about it in recent years. Trump has denied the allegations. Number 3, 5 environmental and cultural heritage groups are suing the FAA over that SpaceX launch that exploded in Texas last month. The groups say the agency violated federal policy by not conducting a comprehensive environmental review before launching the largest rocket ever built. The failed launch blew up SpaceX's launch pad, hurling harmful debris miles away and starting a large fire on state land. Number 4, you're looking at a live shot at the Met Gala, red carpet in New York City. This year's theme honors the late designer Karl Lagerfeld, who led French fashion house Chanel for decades. He was a controversial guy, in part because of his comments about fat phobia, the Me Too movement, and immigration. Number 5, Barbie is releasing a new doll modeled after trailblazing actress Anna May Wong, considered the first Chinese-American actress in Hollywood. Wong was born in Los Angeles to Chinese immigrants and got her start in silent movies before her leading role in the 1922 film The Toll of the Sea. The doll is part of Barbie's Inspiring Women series, which features notable women in history. When we come back, Montana's first transgender lawmaker is suing the state. We'll explain why and what she is saying tonight. That's coming up next. Back now, and Montana's first transgender state legislator today says she is suing the state after she was censored and removed from the House floor, she claims, for speaking up for the rights of trans people. In a tweet announcing the suit, State Rep Zoe Zephyr said, quote, "The recent actions violate my First Amendment rights, as well as the rights of my 11,000 constituents to representation." We've been covering this story on the show. Some of Zephyr's supporters were arrested after they entered the chamber last Monday. And on Wednesday, Zephyr was removed by a vote from the legislature, meaning that she will not be allowed to enter or speak on the floor for the rest of the current session, which actually ends later this week. NBC's legal analyst, Danny Savalos, joins me now. We talked about this earlier, but what do you think about her case? It's really a tough one, right? She's got First Amendment issues, but they have, in theory, the prerogative of running the legislature.
The Montana Constitution is like the federal Constitution in that it proclaims certain rights and obligations, but it is not very detailed. So the Montana Constitution essentially says that the legislature has the power to discipline its own members. Now, what does that mean? And in what circumstances can that discipline be meted out? Can that discipline be meted out as punishment for speaking out or speaking in a way that the rest of the fellow legislators do not appreciate or don't like, whatever the case may be? The answer to that is not in the Constitution, but probably in the courts. So anytime someone's right to speech is infringed upon by the government, not private entities, but the government, then there is a potential First Amendment violation. A court here is going to have to balance these issues out. The federal First Amendment to the Constitution and Montana's apparent right of legislators to discipline their own members.
Well, listen, anybody who has watched legislative back and forth and yelling and debate, these things can get hot. And she said you would have blood on your hands, right? So the question is, does that rise to the level of something that she should be kicked out for?
Well, according to the complaint, there were really two events that are being disciplined. One is the blood on the hands, and then the other is arguably a silent gesture, holding up a microphone, and probably in addition, the fact that there were protesters there in the House as well. So you're absolutely right, though. I mean, this is the country that gave us caning, you know, several hundred years ago. At least one member of the United States legislature, the Congress, was caned almost to death. So the idea that political speech can get heated is nothing new. And people have said in other legislatures that people would have blood on their hands. So even that statement, those words, are not new or novel for legislative debate.
But it's a red state, and she's not red, and that may be part of the issue, I suspect. Danny, thank you very much. Danny Savalos. We now want to bring you to the original with in-depth reporting on a topic that we've been watching. Today, a Missouri judge decided to temporarily block a sweeping rule by the state's attorney general to restrict access to gender-affirming health care in the state for kids and adults. The decision comes after the ACLU and Lambda Legal sued to stop Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey's order. The groups say the rule is discriminatory and an overreach of the AG's authority. Now, across the country, we're seeing more than 100 anti-LGBTQ issues proposed, many of them aimed at restricting gender-affirming care for trans children. This rule, though, this is important. This goes beyond minors. It also impacts adults, something trans supporters warn could become a growing trend. NBC's Shaq Brewster reports.
It's care that could mean the difference between life and death.
I don't think life-saving is an exaggeration at all.
Those are life-saving.
It's life-saving care.
35-year-old Errol Royston lives in St. Louis. He says he's been on testosterone for 8 years now. When he heard about an emergency order filed by Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey, he says he felt like it was an attack on trans people.
So my mind is trying to comprehend all of it. So the first part was anger. The second part was just how do I help my community? Then thirdly, it was what am I going to do?
Legal experts say Bailey's order, if put in place, will be the first of its kind restricting access to gender-affirming care for all trans people in the state, including adults.
No government official or legislator in the United States has gone as far as trying to stop adults from accessing care.
Requiring those seeking gender-affirming care in Missouri to meet a list of criteria before getting treatment. It includes 15 one-hour-long therapy sessions over the course of at least 18 months and having any mental health issues treated and resolved. The rule excludes people who are currently getting treatments as long as they and their doctors comply with the new rules.
When human rights are under attack, what do we do?
In a statement to NBC News, the Missouri Attorney General's office said in part, "We will continue fighting for all patients to have access to adequate health care." Across the country, legislation limiting or banning gender-affirming care has largely centered around children, with at least 12 states passing laws this year. But rights groups worry efforts are now moving beyond minors and increasingly on patients over 18.
There is a concerted effort here to erase trans people from public life. His rule would go into the doctor's offices of adults and interfere with the ability of adults and their doctors to make medical decisions.
These 7 states have bans on Medicaid coverage for gender-affirming care. And in at least 5 states, Republican lawmakers have introduced bills to limit access to gender care for minors and young adults, in some cases for people as old as 26. But studies have shown that transition care can be life-changing for trans adults. According to research published by the NIH, gender-affirming hormone therapy had a positive psychological, physical, and social impact on transgender individuals.
The biggest farce is identifying the treatment as experimental. We're not looking at true outcomes. Reduced suicide, reduced anxiety, reduced depression. Those are life-saving.
For Royston, having the access to his treatments has made all the difference.
If I was not able to get that care to be who I am today, I probably wouldn't be here. If I could have transitioned early in life, there's no telling where I'd be now. I'd be rich somewhere because I'd have nothing holding me back.
And Shaq Brewster joins us now. Shaq, is the argument from some of these state legislatures that are trying to pass this legislation to limit who can, in fact, get trans treatment, is it that they are concerned that people are jumping into this and the decision could be irreversible?
That's exactly the case. And really, when you heard a lot of these measures being initially proposed, they were framed around the context of children, that children shouldn't be doing this, that they should go through certain mental evaluations before there's any care. But now you're seeing the Attorney General's order trying to go beyond that. And the judge's ruling that we saw today, it essentially blocks that order from taking place at least until May 15th. There will be a hearing before then where you'll hear both sides come into the courtroom. They'll have oral arguments, and they'll be able to debate the substance of that order, but it essentially preserves the status quo. The judge writing in her ruling that was announced today that those suing to block this order will be subjected to immediate and irreparable loss, damage, or injury. They say plaintiffs, the current patients, are at high risk of having their medical care interrupted for an unknown length of time. So right now, status quo, Tom, but you see there's an effort to change that.
Yeah, and I've talked to parents who say it absolutely has been life-changing for their kids. All right, Shaq, thanks very much. We appreciate it. Coming up, Pope Francis says there's a secret peace mission going on in Ukraine. We'll tell you about that later in the Global. Plus, we're learning what King Charles is going to wear to his coronation this weekend, and some of the items have been seen before. Stay with us. Okay, did you hear about this one? It's a big red flag. The so-called godfather of artificial intelligence is leaving his job at Google so he could talk openly about what he says are the real dangers of the technology that he helped create. Jeffrey Hinton is telling the New York Times he believes this technology poses a real threat to humanity. A threat to humanity. He says it's hard to see how you can prevent bad actors from using it for bad things. Hinton later clarified on Twitter that he did not leave Google because he thought the company was one of the bad actors, just so he could talk freely about AI's threats as he sees them. NBC's Dave Ingram joins me now. Dave Ingram, Hinton, is not a household name, so help us fit him into the broader AI ecosystem, and what are his concerns? That AI can take over the world?
Yeah, Tom, so you mentioned his nickname, the godfather of AI. I think it's probably more accurate to call him kind of a founding father in the sense that he's one of a very few number of people who have been at the highest level of AI research over the last 30 years or so. He, just to give you a little sense of his bio, he was a long-time academic. He worked at several universities. He later founded a startup that he sold to Google, and then he ended up going there to work in their AI research area. He won the Turing Prize, which is named for Alan Turing, founding another sort of founder of AI theory back in the 40s. It's kind of the Nobel Prize for AI and computer science. So this is a major step for him to step away from Google and list these concerns. He talked a little bit about that in his interview with the New York Times, where he said that he thought that eventually these AI systems could be smarter than humans, but he had thought it was going to be 30 to 50 years off. And he thinks that's not true anymore, that it's going to be potentially much sooner that they'll be that advanced.
So he's brilliant, he is rich, he's the one who helped invent this. How is Google responding to his comments?
Google is taking it, I guess, what you might say, as kind of a stirring upper lip. They released a statement from Jeff Dean. He's the head of their AI effort, and they said that they essentially wish him luck, and he's been a valuable member of their team. Did not disparage him in any way. Said that he is that Google is standing by its practices, which it already considers to be an ethical system to approach AI research.
Have you seen any broader pushback to the wider spread of AI? I mean, it does seem that alarm bells are starting to go off here. We've heard it from Elon Musk and others.
Yeah, there are hundreds, really, of AI researchers who are concerned about where this is going. Even those who are pushing to move faster acknowledge that there are real dangers here. Just to give you a real quick sense of what the danger is, some of these AI systems now not only can they learn on their own, which is kind of the whole idea of AI, but they can learn how to, they sometimes make decisions that are unexpected or learn things that their creators didn't intend for them to learn, and even implement new computer code on the machines that they're running. So much more to see here.
I mean, this is literally HAL from a 2001 Space Odyssey, right? I mean, literally, the computer is making its own decisions, and maybe contrary to what humans want.
I hope not, but the other character in that scene was named Dave as well, so let's hope we never get to the HAL point.
That's right, Dave. Okay, Dave Ingram, thanks very much. NBC covers hundreds of international stories each day, and because you could not possibly read, watch, or listen to all of them, our foreign desk has done it for you. Here are some of the things that they're keeping an eye on. It's a segment we call The Global. In France, tensions high today. The Interior Minister says something like 800,000 people marched for May Day, International Workers' Day. There were fires set in some streets, tear gas, fighting with police, all on display as the protesters rallied against President Macron's move to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. Hundreds of people were reportedly arrested. A police officer seriously injured from a Molotov cocktail. From the papal plane, Pope Francis says the Vatican is involved in a secret peace mission in Russia's war with Ukraine while on his way home from Hungary this weekend. He did not share any details, but said when it's public, he will talk about it. The Pope said the Vatican is willing to help facilitate the return of Ukrainian children taken to Russia during the war. In England, Buckingham Palace says King Charles is going to reuse some historic items of clothing for his coronation on Saturday. They're going to be things from the royal collection worn by previous monarchs at past coronations. Why? The palace says it's for sustainability and efficiency. And they look really cool. Still to come, singer Ed Sheeran back on the stand today in that copyright lawsuit. What he says that he will do if he loses. That's next. Court in New York is wrapping up not too long ago in the copyright lawsuit trial for pop star Ed Sheeran. The singer playing his guitar on the stand in day 5 of the trial over Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. Now, look at this. Our NBC producer in the room tells us Sheeran played a mashup of songs and Marvin Gaye's to try to show how common the chords played in both songs really are. They're common. And here's Sheeran just leaving court in the last hour. He's accused of copying the chord progression on his song Thinking Out Loud from Let's Get It On. Accusations Sheeran denies. NBC's Rahema Ellis joins me now. Rahema, what else do we learn about what's going on? And, I got to say, as a guitarist, I'm wondering, can you really copyright chord progressions? But I'm curious how this went down in court today.
Well, that's the big question that these jurors are going to have to answer. Sheeran got a little bit miffed when he was asked about the comment from the plaintiff's musicologist that's saying he did think there was some copywriting going on. In response to that, Sheeran said, what that musicologist has done is criminal. I don't know why he's allowed to be an expert. We've got a full screen of some other things that Sheeran said in the courtroom today. He said that when asked about this, you have to come in, to have someone come in and say they don't believe you, you must have stole it. I find it insulting. The defense attorney asked Sheeran what he would do if the plaintiffs win, and Sheeran says, if that happens, I'm done. A pretty dramatic response to a question, Tom.
Well, so, okay, there are two frustrated guitarists in the studio here, and we were just talking about this during the break, and I said, you know, we've been playing music for 2,000 years, right? Every chord progression's been done over 2,000 years, and you wonder, you know, I don't know, it seems like it's a real challenge to decide that somebody has copyrighted a particular chord progression.
Well, that seems to be Sheeran's argument, that there are only so many notes on the scale.
Exactly.
And so there's a very strong possibility, according to Sheeran, that there's going to be some overlap in terms of the sound. But he's saying the style, the progression, the actual 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of the notes, the pattern that they come in, that they think that that's more like Sheeran says it's his signature, but of course the plaintiffs are saying that belongs to Marvin Gaye.
And you wonder how much is subliminal, right? You went to bed one night and Marvin Gaye was playing on the radio and it sinks into your brain, and the next thing you know, you're trying to write a song. Anyway.
Yeah, it's really interesting. A little note. Interesting that Sheeran's song is 4 minutes and something like 37 seconds. Marvin Gaye's song is 4 minutes and 36 seconds, a difference of 1 second between the two. That has nothing to do with whether or not anything is copyrighted. It's just a little factoid.
The plot thickens. Okay. Rahima Ellis, thank you very much. That is a wrap for this hour and for the one before. Top Story picks up the coverage right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.